recording.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to all. The House will come to order. I am pleased to welcome you to this preliminary round of Cyber Safe in Schools National ICT Debate Cyber Safe Challenge Trophy 2013 for East Zone. The topic that will be debated is: this House believes that parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior in social media. This House is now in session. First, let me introduce the timekeepers of this session for you. They are Miss Umi Fatihah binti Muhammad Lutfi and Miss Nur Sabrina Amira binti Muhammad Nasir, both students from SMK Tengku Lela Segara, Marang, Terengganu. Ladies and gentlemen of this House, today's debate will be judged by a panel of distinguished adjudicators. Please give a hand to the Chief Adjudicator, Mrs. Soraya binti Omar from Terengganu, Mrs. Shahida Sofia binti Yusuf from Terengganu, and Mr. Ainin Fadli bin Mahmud Zuhani from Terengganu. Member of this House, the motion for today's debate is: the House believes that parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior in social media. To debate the motion and vying for the trophy in this preliminary round are, on my right, the team from Kelantan, which is represented by SMK Dato Ahmad Maher. They will act as the government. The first speaker is Ms. Tengku Nur Shamira binti Tengku Muhammad Nordin, who will play the role of the Prime Minister. The second speaker is Ms. Nur Hafifi binti Muhammad Azman. And the third speaker is Ms. Hassanah binti Razali. And the reply speech will be delivered by Ms. Nur Hafifi binti Muhammad Azman, the second speaker. Now, on my left are the members of the opposition team from SMK Alor Akar, Pahang. The leader of the opposition team and the first speaker is Mr. M. Kirubaharan. The second speaker is Mr. Muhammad Faiz bin Muhammad Luqman. And the third speaker is Mr. Nephew Vinodra. And to deliver the reply speech is Mr. Muhammad Faiz bin Muhammad Luqman, the second speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, the following are the rules and regulation of the debate. Marks will be awarded based on the following: substance, 30 points; strategy, 30 points; style, 20 points; and language, 20 points, which adds up to 100 points. For the reply speech, 50 points will be given for substance, 50 for style, 10 for strategy, and 10 for language, which makes a total of 50 points. The time allocated for each debater is as follows: 7 minutes for the first debaters and 5 for the second and third debaters to debate the motion. 5 minutes for the reply speech. Now, as for the bell, it will be rung once after the first minute and at the end of the 6th minute for the first speaker. At the 7th minute, the bell will ring twice to mark the end of the duration allowed for the first speaker to present his or her arguments. For the second and third speakers, the bell will be rung once after the first minute and at the end of the fourth minute. At the fifth minute, the bell will ring twice to mark the end of the duration allowed for the second and third speaker to present his or her arguments. During the reply speech, the bell will ring once at the fourth minute and twice at the fifth minute to signal that time is up. The adjudicators will ignore any points raised when the stipulated time is up. Now, without further ado, the CyberSafe in Schools National ICT Debate CyberSafe Challenge Trophy 2030 will begin. I repeat, the motion for today's debate reads, this House believes that parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior in social media. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call upon the first speaker from the government team, Ms. Tengku Nur Syahira binti Tengku Muhammad Nordin, to deliver her speech.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Assalamualaikum and very good morning, Madam Speaker, my worthy audience and members of the government team, honorable educators, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the House. The motion for debate today is parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior in social media. We, in the government team, strongly agree with the motion because we think that it is parents' obligation because we think it is the parental obligation to educate, monitor, and protect their children. So they should be accountable for their children's behavior. First of all, I will define the motion. Parents are fathers and mothers or guardians responsible, answerable, or accountable as for something within one's power, control, or management. Social media, websites, and other online means of communication that are used by a large group of people to share information and to develop social or professional contacts. Behavior means how the children conduct themselves. School-going children are the children who go to school in the age of 7 years old. Moving on, I'll specify the role of the speakers. As the Prime Minister, I will define the motion. And give 1 point. My second speaker will define what the opposition leader has said and give 2 points. My third speaker will give all the points given by the opposition leader. Moving on, our first point is educate. Parents must educate children on what is right and what is wrong, what they can do and what they cannot do in social media. The parents must also instill good values in the children's soul, because they are the ones who are responsible to do so. It is not the parents who educate children, who also will do it for them. Because the school-going children is 17 years old, it's obviously under the parents' obligation. It means the parents are, it's obviously the parents' obligation. It obviously shows.
Besides the parents, even law and enforcers to punish students.
But, okay, thank you. But this motion focuses on parents.
Did he accept?
Our stand is because it is the parental obligation to educate, monitor, and protect them. Because the parents are the ones
obligation.
who close with the children, they spend most of the time at home together. As, the children, if the parents do not educate the children well, the misbehavior in social media will happen. As an example, there was a case where a German boy who uploaded 1,000 songs on a sharing site on social media. The state court has that the kid should not be held responsible on him. And the parents
Your
are
Honor.
one.
That instance only shows that the parents were the one who was blamed for it. But today's debate is whether or not that should happen again in other instances.
Pardon?
The instance you have stated only shows that this has happened before. Parents have been blamed for their child's misdoings. But the debate today is whether or not that should happen again for other instances, not whether or not it has happened.
Media is a new thing, and as parents nowadays can catch up with its development because the social media is getting more advanced days by days. And as parents, they must be responsible. They must be responsible, and the children should learn about the social media too, in order to educate the children. So that's why the parents need to educate the children on what is right to do,
The speaker
social
isn't
media and what
really
is wrong.
the team a good
I can actually
a
understand.
good case.
Minutes already. And then see the third one. Yeah, there's some cuts out.
Before I take my seat, we, the government team, would like to stress again that parents should be held responsible for the school-going children's behavior in social media.
It's been 5
Because
minutes.
we believe that it is the parental obligation to educate, monitor, and protect the children. Thank
Keeps
you.
repeating.
What the case line?
Right?
What?
We have heard the arguments raised by the first speaker. Now, let me invite
Mr. M. Kirubaharan. Oh, Mr. M. Kirubaharan. Maybe, is it random? I thought we could clap at the end. Maybe that's positive, not positive, usually good. I think I'm scared of I couldn't catch what people say with your eyes. Well, she accepted both.
Now, let me invite the leader of the opposition team, the first speaker, to deliver his speech.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Oh, you went from the
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, adjudicators, misguided members of the government side, my opposition comrades. The time has now come for me, as the first speaker of opposition, to expose the mass confusion of the side government, and I'll do so with great pleasure. But before that, let me state our stand, which is we, the opposition, disagree with the motion of parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior in social media because it's just unfair. Before I move on with my contentions, I would like to first rebut the first point, the Prime Minister. I'll rebut the fusion of a case line and the point, which is just the same. The case line, which is the parental obligation to educate and monitor. And the first point is to educate. How would you educate a children to have a better attitude if you don't reward him or her for doing good, or punish him for doing bad? And the Prime Minister herself said the parents must teach what's right and wrong. How can you teach what's right and wrong? Or how can you specifically teach what is wrong if you don't show what happens if they do wrong? So that's basically it, and I think it's not enough damage to cripple the case. Next, to the definitions. We basically reject the definitions because it's truistic and it's undebatable. Therefore, we find it imperative to define the following key terms in today's motion. Parents refers to caretakers of the child. Held responsible refers to face the consequences. School-going children refers to secondary school-going children. We're narrowing it down because we simply can't debate when we're also debating about primary school because they are simply too young and parents must take responsibility for them, and they are not mentally and physically sane as secondary school
Your
students.
eye, please.
Yes, ma'am.
The Prime Minister has defined school-born children as the children who age 7 to 17. Thank you.
But we like to narrow it down to specifically because it's undebatable for primary school, because any one of us can bring up primary school and it's just undebatable. Therefore, we narrow it down to secondary school. Behaviors refers to actions that bring or causes negative consequences and social medias as social networks. With the rebuttals and definitions out of the way, I'd like to introduce our roles for the day. As the first speaker of the opposition, I've already rebutted the first speaker of the government and will put forth an irrefutable argument which falls under the key phrase of be responsible for our own actions. My second speaker will then put forth two more watertight contentions, which are first, subjectivity in parenting, and second, parents are still humans. My third speaker will then do what he does best, which is to rebut all the points coming from the government side and prove to you by way of sound reasoning that our case is indisputable and this motion should never be passed. We would also like to state the burdens of proof and burdens of clash in today's debate. Our burden of clash is to show you that it's just unfair and unjust for parents to be held responsible. While, however, the burden of proof for government today is to prove that it's fair and just for parents to be held responsible. That being clarified, I would like to move on to my first contention, which falls under the key phrase of responsible for our own actions. You may ask why. Why should children be responsible for their own actions? This is because children can learn the outcomes and consequences and never commit them again in the future. What proof I have? We have the social cognitive theory as popularized by Albert Bandura. The social cognitive theory has two parts of it. I'll explain it, the first part first, which can be summed up in a simple term. Monkey see, monkey do. The proof of it is the Albert Bandura's Bobo doll experiment. The Bobo doll experiment is where children are separated into two groups. And first group are exposed to the video of an adult beating up a Bobo doll. And another group are not exposed to that video. And the result is the children who were exposed to the video beat up the Bobo doll just the same way that the adult did. While the other group of children who didn't see or wasn't exposed to that video didn't do anything like that adult did. And the second part of the social cognitive theory is outcome expectancy. Let me give you an example. A father goes hunting with his child in the forest. He sees a deer. He just throws the stones, and then the deer dies, and he brings it back home, cook and eat for him to survive. Then the children will do it because he knows that good outcomes there is a good outcome, which is eating and ensuring survival. Well, let's take another analogy with the same dad. The dad is fighting with a stranger, and then the stranger calls up his friends or cronies and then beat up the dad. Then the children will never do that because they know that there is a bad outcome of it. And the importance of this is that the children will learn the outcome and never do it again. So this is important for them to be responsible so that they know what is it like to be punished if you do something wrong. Therefore, becoming better and never commit such a behavior or such a crime again. The effects of being responsible for their own actions, there are two of them, short-term and long-term. The short-term effect is that children will be good after the punishment simply because there is no reason for them to commit that crime again or the behavior again, because they know that the outcome is really bad and they don't benefit anything from it. The long term is, I'm sure all of us remember that students or children are the future leaders of the world. They are the next generation. If this is about to happen, where children can do wrong things and get away with it, with someone to take the blame, like parents, then it's clearly that the future society will be more corrupted than it is now, simply because they can do crimes, they do wrong things, and they can just get away with it if someone else is about to take a crime. So with that, we the opposition like to restate our stand, which is we totally disagree with the motion of parents should be held responsible for the school-going children's behavior in social media because it's just unfair. Thank you.
Well, you can clap, I clap hands for him. And then, so do I, but then, he do. See, but you know this. So small. I forgot.
The government team will now present their arguments. Please welcome the second speaker of the government team, Ms. Nur Habibi binti Muhammad Azman.
They know how to work that hard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. I give to the members, to the Madam Speaker, the members of the government, the members of the opposition team, the honorable
They
judges,
still do.
and the members of the House. The motion today states, this House believes that parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior in social media. We from the government team strongly agree with this motion. We believe that parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior in social media because it is parental obligation to educate, monitor, and protect their children. First of all, I will rebut what the opposition leader has said. He said that he is isolating the school-going children. He is only focusing on the secondary children. Primary school children are still children. Why should we exclude them from this debate?
Oh, that's a rebuttal.
They are still underage. And he is talking about beating the strangers outside the social media. What we are talking about is the motion, the behavior in the social media. He is not predicting the motion.
Yeah, that's quite true.
So, moving on, I will introduce new points from the government team. Our second point lies under the key phrase of monitor.
That's observation.
These days, parents should monitor their children because the motion today is stressing out about school-going children that lies under the age 7 until 17 years old.
That's why they
Just like the
reported that.
Prime Minister has defined. They are still underage kids and this should be supervised by the parents. Monitoring the children is supervising on what they are doing on the social media sites such as Facebook. Whether they are chatting, uploading photos, or sharing their whatever activities with their friends. They should supervise their kids by knowing who are their online friends, who are they connecting with,
What is monitoring?
and what are they encouraging themselves with. Because the Facebook is used worldwide, we don't know who can harm our children. That's why the children need monitoring. So parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior for the social network, for the social media because children, it is parental obligation to educate, monitor, and protect. Yes.
Say the parents do monitor the children, but they still do get in trouble. Should the parents still be blamed for that even though they do monitor the children?
Yes, because it is underage. Parents should do more than that, more than monitoring, more than that, protecting them. They are still underage. And now the third point is under the keyword protection. The parent can protect the children by filtering the sites that the children can access. For example, in Malaysia, a year 4 student can access into a pornography site and harm his friend for what he has learned in the pornography site. So this proves that why parents need to filter that what the children can access. They can also protect them by filtering who their friends can interacting with.
What kids who's
Because these days there are more,
content on Facebook?
there are many cases on cyberbullying, and most of the cases end up with the victim killing herself.
Right now, the main objective of punishing a child is to teach the child a lesson. Okay? If we punish the parents, then what lesson are we trying to teach the parents? Not to have kids.
Sorry.
Actually, this is sorry if they can answer it.
But you have to have
By
an
this
answer.
protecting,
Then you get not. You can just not answer it. But you get deduct. Not
this includes checking out the list of their friends on Facebook, their contact on their WhatsApp, and their followers and whom are they following on Twitter. The reason is the children are naive and they couldn't see the consequences that might lead toward them. So it is our responsibility. As their parents to provide protection to the children. So this proves that parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's
just not
behavior on social media because it is the parental obligation to educate, monitor, and protect them. Thank you.
I can't get the second one. parents should monitor their children lah. It's just
It's the same as the first one.
yeah, it's just
I didn't record Nevin giving the BOI. I forgot. Should be watching this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will now call upon the second speaker from the opposition team to present his argument. Please give hand to Mr. Muhammad Faiz bin Muhammad Lokman.
Second speaker, government is this one convention. Two. She gave two.
I can get it.
Yeah.
A very good morning. I would like to pay to the Speaker of the House, misguided members of the government, my opposition comrades, honourable adjudicators, and attorneys of the law. First, I would like to reaffirm our stand, which is we, the opposition, strongly disagree with today's motion, which is parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior in social media because it's just unfair. Now, before I move on to my points, I would first like to rebut the points given forth by the government side, starting with their first speaker. Their first speaker's point fell in the key words educate. Now, I would like to pose a question to them. How do we educate if we don't punish them for what they do wrong, and if we don't reward them for what they do right? And as stated earlier, we punish these children so that they know of what's wrong and they won't do it again. If we punish the parents, what is that accomplishing? Are we trying to teach them a lesson as to not have children? The whole point of punishment is to make the person learn, which is why we should punish children. Now, the second point falls under the key phrase, to monitor children. This point mainly harps on how children are still underage.
For your answer,
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good.
you are saying how can we educate children without punishing and giving rewards to them? I'm sorry, sir, but that's not the only way to educate children. Thank you.
Well, I would really hope to see how you would educate children in your speech, ma'am. Thank you.
For your eyes. Okay.
Oh, what?
Now, to monitor children, their point of monitoring children falls mainly under the idea that the children are still underage, which is why we should monitor them. Well, I would like to rebut this speech later in my point, which falls under the key phrase, parents are still human. And finally, their third point is about how parents should protect them. And their closing statement on this was that the child cannot see the consequences of their actions, which is why the adults or their parents should be the ones to take the fall for them. Well, the whole reason why they can't see the consequences of their actions is why we should punish them and make them see, so that humanity has a better future with people not running around committing crimes thinking that there's someone to take the fall for them. Now, lastly, before I move on to my points, we are excluding primary school children from our definition because the age of 7 to 12 is a tender age in which the parents must stand in for their children, which makes this whole debate undebatable if we take it from 7 to 12. And the age group 7 to 17 is simply too large because primary school children and secondary school children are not physically and mentally the same, as secondary school children are facing puberty and have raging hormones and are more and have a higher tendency to do something stupid. Which is why we're taking it only to secondary school students. Yes, ma'am.
So the parents should not be responsible for the secondary students. I'm sorry, but the secondary students are still children. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Although they are still children, they are older children, and because they are older children, they need to start facing the consequences of their actions. Thank you. Now, moving on to my second point, moving on to the opposition second point, that falls under the key phrase, subjectivity in parenting. To make you understand this point, allow me to first elaborate on the main idea of this point, which is basically what constitutes good differs from person to person. An example, ladies and gentlemen, you have a hardworking student in your class. Some may think this hardworking student is good because he gets good grades, while some think it's bad because he doesn't have a social life. This shows just how subjective these values and virtues are in life. Linking back to the motion, a parent might think that they're doing a great job in raising their children. They might see some offensive statements in their children's online activities, but to them, because of the subjectiveness, it falls under the boundaries of joking. But the same statement, when viewed by another set of parents, might be an inexcusable offense. So, when they press charges onto the first set of parents, because their child has posted something offensive, I'm sure you can see what's wrong here. It's already based off of subjectiveness. I could just say that I hate this place because of the green table clause, but that's not fair, is it? Because it's subjective. Now, the final point of the opposition falls under the key phrase, parents are still human. This is where I would like to rebut. Parents are still human. You can definitely imagine them monitoring their children the best that they could. But parents are still human. They go to work and their children go to school. There are many opportunities for the children to slip away unnoticed and do things. And given Facebook's multiple privacy settings, they could just simply make another account in which they block their parents from viewing it. So, parents, it's just unfair for parents to be blamed even when they have tried their absolute best in trying to monitor their children's activities on Facebook or any social media. Which is why I would like to ask you again, this type of blaming them for doing so is like blaming them for being human. They just can't help it because they're imperfect. Now I would like to reaffirm our stand, which is we, the opposition, strongly disagree with today's motion. Parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior in social media because it is just unfair. Thank you.
Because the doctors are not good. It's not solid.
And they don't answer their POIs.
And they don't understand the points that we're giving them.
Yeah, I know. That's one thing that you don't answer my point.
They don't understand. They
That's
don't
just
fully
the-
understand this points.
Just
And why
not
points
yeah, that's the
if you go
proof,
for
right?
it, yeah.
That's the proof of
And they didn't give their burden of proof. They always go ahead with their burden of clash. You have to understand the
then
points
the
in order
reply
to
speech is frustrating.
rebut them.
The session continues with Ms. Hasana Ghazali, the third speaker from the government team. A big hand for her.
Which slap? You just stand up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assalamualaikum and very good morning. I distinguished members of my government, members of the opposition, honorable educators, and the members of the House. The motion today reads, this House believes that parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior in social media. We from the government strongly agree with this motion. We from the government believe that parents should be held responsible for their school-going children's behavior in social media because it is the parental obligation to educate, monitor, and protect their children. As a third speaker of the government today, I will rebut, refute, and argue all the points given by the opposition.
I think she's the
First of
the
all,
other two are like
the opposition
movies.
leader has stood up and stating their point. However, the Prime Minister, the opposition leader, gave example about crime. What I see, they fail today is they forget that they are talking about children's behavior in social media. They are talking about crimes outside of the social media. So the huge flaw of the opposition today is they don't fully relate to the motion. Second of all, the opposition leader said that giving reward and punishing them, how can we, the opposition leader said that how can we educate the